In this video, we are going to cover an example of misinformation published by the mainstream media, discussing the source and the intention of the message. Before discussing the misinformation article, it is important to understand the context. In 2021, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau called for an early election amid the coronavirus pandemic. The move was questioned by many. As the country struggled to keep people safe from the virus, summoning hundreds of thousands of voters to voting polls didn't seem like an urgent task. The decision was even more controversial because Trudeau's party alluded that his party was the only one committed to keep people safe from COVID, while the opposing party would not incentivize vaccination or other prevention measures. After the elections, a growing sentiment of discontent sparked among part of the public's response. They seemed to think that the COVID restrictions were going too far and started supporting movements such as the Freedom Convoy, a right-leaning movement. In February of 2021, the Freedom Convoy movement created a GoFundMe account to support their protest. Around this time, CBC News, a state-owned media, published the following article. Convoy protest received hundreds of thousands of donations that appear to be from abroad. The article claims the participation of foreign influence, particularly from the United States, in supporting the right-wing political movement in Canada. The connection had an inflammatory connotation because it correlated Canada to the current politics in the United States, a year after the January 6th insurrection. The article used the comments left on the donation record at the GoFundMe page as a tip to figure out where the donations were coming from. This method may have been a naive assumption. It was not as conclusive as simply questioning the website owners. The users who donated could have left any type of comment on the website. In fact, many donations were made by people named Justin Trudeau. Rather than jumping to conclusions, the CBC reporters should have confirmed the allegations before publishing the article. This clear mistake contributed to spreading fear among people and spreading misinformation to other media. It also possibly helped to tarnish the reputation of the Freedom Convoy movement. It alluded to a connection with the extremism of the far right in the United States. And raised national security concerns, as one of the interview states. Perhaps some additional action on the part of all of us is necessary to be sure we can't see any kind of contributions coming to undermine our public safety or national security. The article was probably originally aimed at the general public that didn't have an formed opinion about the Freedom Convoy yet. Given that the protest was demonstrating discontent with the current government policies, and considering that CBC is owned by the government, it's possible to assume that the article had the intention to disqualify the movement by associating it with a far-right political party in the United States. By association, the Canadian government may have had an interest in disqualifying the protest because it was going against their interests by expressing their opposition. As a consequence, the House of Commons Committee on Public Safety and National Security had to call a hearing on the role of crowdfunding platforms had played in funding the protest. The GoFundMe president came to Canada for the hearing. Mr. Scheer informed the committee that 88% of the donated funds to the Freedom Convoy campaign originated in Canada, and 86% of the donors were from Canada. Mr. Scheer completely debunked the CBC article's claim, clarifying any doubt over the financial support from the United States. This episode serves as an important opportunity to highlight the fact that misinformation can serve purposes on behalf of either political party's agenda. Journalists should uphold the principle of truth when publishing stories on the news outlets, as failing to do so can bring devastating consequences to society. On a personal note, needed to bring up that I don't personally agree with the actions from the Freedom Convoy. I believe the siege in the area in front of the parliament for 3 weeks was not a good action. I think that as soon as they've done what the point that they wanted to make, they should have just left and not just stood their feet there and caused a lot of trouble as they did. But I do think that the people who have a different opinion than us should have the right to say whatever they want, really, as long as it's not really hate speech. I think people should be allowed to disagree, because we are not going to be right the whole time. It's arrogant to think that we are right the whole time. Other people will be, so it's important to listen to other people's opinions so we can be better, so we can evolve as a society.